We're going to create tables for this database based on the entity relationship diagram in your assignment. Then we are going to create forms for those tables and do data entry by using those forms. After we have data entered into the tables, we're going to create some queries, and finally we'll create a report. Our first step in this lab is creating your database. After creating the database, we can create the tables. The tables are going to be based on the entity relationship diagram in the lab. There are 3 tables that we're going to create: skater, race, and race result. Let's start with the skater table. To do this, we're going to put it into design view where it's a little bit easier to see the fields. In the skater table, skater ID is our primary key. You can see it's the primary key due to the little key icon on the left-hand side for the field. Skater date of birth is not going to be a text-based field, it's going to be a date. In Access, date time is the generic data type for either dates or times. After we have all the fields entered for the table, we can save it and then create another one. For our race table, race ID is going to be the primary key. After creating the race and the skater tables, we can create the race result table. The race result table is a little bit different than the previous tables because we don't have an auto number field that is going to be used as the primary key. Instead, in this table, we're going to have the combination of skater ID and race ID that are the foreign keys also be the primary key. So one thing to watch out for is when you set the 2 fields as a primary key, you can't select one, set it as the primary key, then select the other and set it as the primary key. That'll bounce it back and forth. Instead, what you need to do is select both at the same time and then make them the primary key. So you can do that by pressing Shift if both of them are together, or if they're separated, you can use Control to click both. Now the important thing to remember here is when you right-click, you still need to be holding down the Control key. That's what keeps both of them selected. If you don't have the Control key held down, or the Shift key if you were doing Shift-click, then you're going to focus on just one field again. So you can see we have both Skater ID and Race ID set up as our primary key. This means that each unique combination of Skater ID and Race ID is the primary key. So in race number 1, skater ID number 1 can exist one time. I do not have the option to have race ID number 1 and list skater ID number 1 twice. Now that we've created our three tables, one of the things to be aware of is that you can set an input mask on fields. What the input mask does for you is it controls exactly what data you're allowed to put in there, so the pattern of data. So common things you might want to do that for would be something like a postal code or a phone number or even an email address, so that you know that people are putting things in the correct format. Stops you from getting bad data in your database. So for our example here, we're going to take a look at the skater table and we're going to modify that so that the phone number has an input field. And again, I need to get into design view. And if I go to the phone number, it is short text, but you can see we have this input mask. And if I click on that and then click on the three dots, one of the input masks that are built right into Access is for phone number. So notice that there's some common ones here so that you can easily add this without understanding the syntax for the input mask. And now that we have the three tables created, we can go through and set the relationships among them. So in our race result table, just quickly looking back, in our race result table, we do have skater ID and race ID, which are going to be foreign keys for the race ID and skater ID in the race and skater tables. So we need to link those together so that the database actually understands what's going on. I am going to save and close all of these tables because they can be a little bit cranky if they're open. And then to build the relationships, we go to Database Tools and Relationships. And it's going to ask us which tables we want to add. I'm going to use Shift-click here to select all of them and add them all. When you set up the relationships between the tables, you can just drag and drop from one table to another. And you can see that it's matching up race ID in the race table with race ID in the race result table. And I'm going to turn on enforcing referential integrity. That's what tells the system to do the many-to-one relationship. And I'm going to do the same over here for skater ID, linking it up with skater ID. And again, we're turning on enforce referential integrity. So you can see we now have a many-to-one relationship from a race, and we also have a many-to-one relationship from the skaters to the race results. So I'm going to save our relationships and close that. And now we can create forms for each table. If all we want is a basic form, it's really easy within Access. We just select the table that we want, click on Form, and it automatically creates a form for us. So you can see that by default it's including all of the fields that are in that table. It also includes data for the table that it's linked to, but we don't need to fill in that in when we enter stuff. So we're going to create the form for race and save that. And we're going to leave that having the same name as the table does. And then we'll go to race result. We'll create a form there. And again, save that. And finally for skater. And save that. Now that we've created our basic forms, we can use those forms to actually do the data entry. So in our lab assignment, we're going to set up 5 skaters. Notice that the skater ID up top is new. That's what shows up when we're doing auto numbering. It'll actually modify that to be whatever the next available number is within the record set. So I'm going to enter the data in for 5 of my folks. In order to enter data, we need to change it out of layout view and change it over to form view. That's where we can actually start to enter our data. And my screen is cutting the field names off just a little bit because I have a low resolution for recording for you guys. I can slide this over a little and see if that helps. There, that'll work for now. So I'm going to enter in my 5 records. And when I'm done entering the data, I just click Next Record, and it'll create a new one for me. Alright, all done. I have created my 5 skaters, and my next step is I want to create my 2 races. And again, I'm going to change that into form view so I can do my data entry. And those are my 2 races. Now I need to put in some race results. For our race results, we're assuming that all 5 skaters participated in both races, and the result time, so the number of seconds, so our finishing time, is going to be between 33 and 55 seconds for each one of those individual results. So we need to enter a total of 10 results overall. So this is the results for Skater 1 in Race 1, and we'll give a finishing time of 35 seconds. And then Skater 1 in Race 2, we will give a finishing time of 50 seconds. So this data is just stuff we're making up. Nothing is the source. But what is important, again, is the idea that I cannot duplicate the same data in my combination of skater ID and race ID because those two combined are my primary key. So if we attempt to do that, so if I try and do skater ID 1 and race ID 1 again, and try and go to the next record, it'll actually give me an error telling me that we've got a problem because my referential integrity isn't working out and we're duplicating. So I'm going to go with Skater 2 and Race 1 and carry on. Alright, we have our 10 records in for our race results, and we can verify that all of that data is in there by opening up our tables. So that's our races, that's our race results that were entered, and there are our skaters. Next up, we want to create a query for Winnipeg race results. So we're going to go to Create, and we'll start with the query wizard on this one. And we'll create a simple query. And one of the things that isn't immediately obvious in this is that you can pick data from multiple tables as part of your query. So for our example, we want to start with the race table, and we want the race location field. So we have the race table selected already, and the race location field, put it on the selected side. Then we want data from the skaters. So we want the skater first name and the skater last name. So we select the skater table, and select first name and last name. Finally, we want the finishing time from race results. And we want the detailed information in our query. And we'll take a look at the query once we open it up. Actually, you know what? Let's go straight to the design when we click Finish. And we can also modify this to be a Winnipeg race query. So you can see when this opens up, the query actually has all three of our tables and is showing the relationship amongst the tables. It's a little hard to view just because of the order that it chose to put the tables in. If we move this around a little bit, it becomes a little easier to see. That's better. So for our race location, we do want this to be only based on the Winnipeg location. So in criteria here, we're going to go equals Winnipeg. So it's only going to gather records where the value of race location is Winnipeg. And we also want to change the sorting on this so that our race results are going in ascending order. So starting with the lowest value, which would be our winners, and moving up to the highest value, which is going to be our not winners. Once we've created this query, let's make sure we've got it saved. And then if we click on the Run button, we can see the results. So you can see we have all of our Winnipeg results, and we are sorted in ascending order, starting with the lowest, going to the highest. Next on our list of things to do is to create a report for the Calgary race results. Step one of that is to create another query for the Calgary race results. Then we create the report based on that query. I'm just going to clean up some space on the screen here and close all of the tabs I have open right now. So just to do it a little bit differently, instead of using the query wizard this time, I'm just going to go into query design straight out so you can see another way that we can go about it. So you can see when we do it this way, a little bit different interface, but it's asking us for basically the same information. So it still wants to know what tables we're going to put in there. So I'm going to select all the tables and add them to our queries so they're available for us. And close this window. And then down at the bottom, I pick what tables and what fields that I want instead of doing it in that wizard interface. So first on our list, the table that we wanted was the race, because we want to grab race location from that. Then the next table is we wanted to grab the skater information. So again, we'll grab first name, and we'll do skater again and grab their last name. And finally, we wanted the finishing time, so that is going to be out of the race result. And, oops, there's our finishing time. And just like before, we want to set it up so that we're querying only for a specific location. So in our criteria, we're going to go equals Calgary. And for our race results, we're going to do ascending. And we'll set this query as Calgary race results. And now we can run the query. And again, we get only the race location for Calgary and all the results for our skaters there, sorted in ascending order. Once we've created the query, we can create a basic report that includes these results. select the query first and go to Create, and then we can create a report. And you can see when it creates this report, it's automatically grabbing everything that was inside that query. We want to make this look a little bit prettier. So modify some of our field names here, because just to put some spaces in there. And we do not need to keep these the same name at all. If we wanted to clean this up some more, we might take Skater out of here and just have it first name and last name. Whatever is appropriate for whatever we're running the report on. One of the things I definitely want to do with this particular report is you can see that our report is hanging over the far right hand side, so it's actually going outside our page boundary. So just like an Excel spreadsheet, we can get in between the cell size and we can drag it over this way a little bit and slide everything over so that we fit within the page. And I'm going to save this just to make sure I don't lose it. And that's it. We've gone through the whole process of creating an Access database, setting up some tables with the appropriate relationships between them, including setting up that one table with the two fields acting as a single primary key in combination. We have also set up queries to pull data out of those tables. We've done forms for entering data into the tables, and we have also done a report based on a query.